afternoon, everyone. If I could ask you to put your headphones on for this session, please, for optimal audio. Welcome to Event Sustainability Live 2023, brought to you by Event Industry News and sponsored by Evolution Dome. I'm your host on this stage for today, Zach Goodman from DRP Group. And just to run through a couple of things before we get going, we've got captions to the right of me, to the left of you. And if you want those in a different language, please download the Interprify app. We also have a QR code that takes you to Slido, where you can ask questions throughout. At the end, I will be around with a microphone as well. So, 17 UN Sustainable Goals are a lot to be aligning to us as a business or a team. The question is, can our work in the events industry tackle all 17? Well, our next panel of experts are going to discuss this, and leading the panel is Kiwanuka, who is the founder of the Ops Nest, the home of learning and a community for ops professionals. So, Lou, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us today. For those of you who don't know what the Ops Nest is, the Ops Nest is a group of event professionals that are at the operational coalface of events, and we come together and learn from each other, make mistakes together, and try and make sure that we make mistakes effectively. One of our kind of projects that we do is something called One Change, and the idea behind it is that if you make one change a month and set a commitment to making a change, you can do it in a very iterative way. And actually one of the fundamental reasons why I think as an industry we struggle to make some of the sustainable changes that we're needing to make is that fundamentally we first need to learn how to make change. So when we were talking with Event Sustainability Live about what this session could look like, we love a challenge in operations and events. So I thought we'd go straight for the big guns and go for how do we fit all 17 in? Because sometimes we focus our energies very much on just one aspect of sustainability or two, whatever the kind of name of the moment is. So we go from sustainability in terms of green initiatives to accessibility, but there's 17 of these, and I think sometimes we need to look at how we're making change holistically. So I'd like to welcome to the stage our three panellists, and I'll explain a little bit about why I've asked them to be here. So Alya here is from Whitespace. Whitespace have just joined the One Change programme, and they have as a business committed to making one change a month to reduce their negative impact on the world and increase their positive impact on the world. So I'll be coming to you in a sec so you can fill us in a little bit more. And then Matilda from EMC3, I attended an event last week which was about events being a force for good. Which I'm really passionate about. If you listen to anything that I've been going on about, I just think it's so exciting that the event industry touches every other industry and every other population in the world, whether it's a wedding or a funeral or a business-to-business event. We touch so much. So if we got it right, our influence and our ripple effect would go so much further. So Matilda's here from EMC to kind of impart a little wisdom on that front as well. And then Damaris, who is from one of our partner companies called Sorensen. And Damaris spoke at an event of ours earlier in the summer and was just brought some incredible experience, lived experience to our conversation, particularly around accessibility, but also around inequalities. So, can you, now that I've done a bit of an overview, can we go back through and can you tell us why you're excited to be on this stage? Alya, let's start with you.
Yes, hi, I'm Alya. I'm the Sustainability and Social Impact Manager at Whitespace Group. So we work building exhibitions, stands, graphics, core services, and then we also have portables and e-commerce. It's amazing to see recently, since COVID, how much the events industry is taking sustainability and social issues more seriously. Events like this just did not really exist on this scale before COVID. So you've got things like Reset Connect, you have something like Event Sustainability Live that gives professionals an opportunity to collaborate and communicate and share what we're good at, share what we've failed at, because you can't just hold things close to your chest and in a competitive business way. In order to grow, we need to share more.
Absolutely, thank you. And Matilda, over to you.
Hi, I'm Matilda Riley. I'm the sustainability consultant at EMC3. We're an agency based here in the UK, the US, and I work internally to make sure that we're behaving as sustainably as possible, but also working with our clients and on our events to make sure that our values and the clients' values align on sustainability, and we can produce events like you came to, where we believe are as sustainable as possible. A bit like what Alya was saying, we take the holistic approach to sustainability, so really important, the 17 UN sustainability goals, looking at the environment, people, planet, profit, everything.
Excellent. And Damaris, over to you.
Sorry, I forgot to turn my interpreter on. Okay, so now you've got a brief understanding of how it feels to lack access. So I'm the business development for SignVideo by Sorensen. We're a video relay service, which means that deaf people can contact SignVideo and organise events and things in their first language, which is British Sign Language. So I was born deaf, I'm from a deaf family, so sign language has been my first language and English is my second language. So I've grown up working in various different charities throughout my career and experienced different sorts of accessibility, and I've got different ideas of accessibility solutions, and I know how it feels to be excluded. And that's my background.
Excellent. Thank you, Damaris. I think we've got a bit of feedback. Are we okay? All right, lovely, fab. Right, so, because we're in ops, let's get cracking. So the 17 sustainable goals under the UN are kind of carved up into 3 different categories. People, planet, and a lot of you will know profit. I prefer prosperity, because profit to me seems like a bit of a dirty word sometimes. People, for some reason, don't like people making profit, but that's kind of what our jobs are, is to make profit. So let's go with prosperity. For this case, because I think it feels a lot more sustainable. We're going to start with people, and as we go through each of these, I would also like as many of you within the audience to be thinking about what ideas you have to incorporate that little slither into your event as well. And my colleague Tamla at the back, so if you raise a hand, Tam will come over and find out what your idea is. Is that okay? Lovely. And if we'll stick around at the end, so if you don't get to tell us what your idea is, tell us at the end and we'll upload it into an open source sheet and send it out to the attendees afterwards as well. So the plan is, in the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be pulling together a list of things that you can do, take away, put into your events, and then feedback once you've done it and let us know what you learnt, what was a mistake, what you do better next time. We're going to start on people. So the top 2 kind of slightly go hand in hand, but have a different angle depending on where you're coming from. So let's talk about poverty and hunger, because sometimes I think in certainly a business-to-business event, we are quite distanced from poverty and hunger. There's usually lots of food around. There's usually people coming to events, but by very nature have been able to get to the event, bought a ticket for the event. So sometimes we are quite distanced. I'm going to come to you, Alya, first, please, if I may. What ideas have you got for incorporating that into an event?
Well, like you said, I think they sort of go hand in hand, and what we've been focusing on at Whitespace is working with our local community as much as possible. The events industry creates an insane amount of waste, as everyone knows. Something gets used for 6 hours, and then if it's not rented, it's disposed of. But there's actually a lot of life left in a lot of these things. There's carpet on the floor. What's going to happen to that carpet? We are working with our chosen charity for next year, which is called Sustainable Merton. So a lot of our...
Sorry, Sustainable what?
Sustainable Merton. So it's the borough that our offices are in.
Okay.
And they will help us sort of redistribute any ex-rental, ex-stand furniture to the local community. There's also an organisation some people might have already heard of called Event Cycle. So again, they work with flooring, and they can redistribute vinyl flooring, which is hard to recycle, to be used in social housing. And even in our warehouse, we have rolls and rolls of flooring that ended up not being used. That's absolutely brand new, and it's hard to recycle it. So it's better to be reused for its actual purpose, which isn't a 3-hour show. It's to go in someone's house. And if you look at something like hunger, I think there was a whole presentation about this just before this one, but there are things like Too Good To Go and Alya, which are moving into the event spaces, which can redistribute food and catering on site to the wider or local communities and make sure that it's not just being thrown out.
Absolutely. I think it's, I don't know about you, but it's the time and it's the person that's going to be needed in the organisation to follow through on the overall life cycle of every element that's within the event. I do know that that's somewhat landing on the operations heads sometimes within the event, and that's an extra job on top of everything else that is to be done, which I think is a real sticking point in that regard. But we need to find a way to incorporate that in our process, don't we? And what about you, Matilda?
Yeah, we use Alya and Too Good To Go, but as you said, it's an extra thought. You have to think about it at the beginning. And we try to be as sustainable as possible, and sometimes things like that do slip through the nook, and it's annoying when it does. But we had a really great anecdote that we did an event in Manchester, and we had a load of food left over, and Alya couldn't take it because it had been out for about an hour and it wasn't packaged. And we spoke to this family that some of the local person knew, and they owned a food bank, and what they did was they went out and found homeless people on the streets, and we donated all the leftover food from that event to this family-run food bank, and they went out and delivered that food after the event to homeless people, and that was such a touching story for internal and for then our client to also say. And we speak of stories, and I don't want to say we only do it for marketing, but that was also a really nice element of the event, because you knew that wasn't going to be wasted, and it went to people that are genuinely hungry, and a small food bank that are desperate for donations.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because quite often in the fast-pacing environment that we work in, we quite often have to go with national organisations. And again, it comes down to time. To seek out smaller, more local organisations is sometimes harder, but 100% worth it.
Oh yeah,
and getting more direct benefit and more authentic benefit maybe as well.
100%, yeah.
So we're leading on to kind of good health and well-being for our next topic on the list. Damaris, do you have anything to add into this conversation?
Well, the first thing I can think about that is important to mention is that deaf people are slightly behind in terms of health. The main issue being a lack of access to the content. So if you have, for example, if you've got a problem, you look on a website, you find out some information about it. If it's all in English, that's not my first language. My first language is sign language. So where do I go to get information? So I think access to support information and support services is key to that, and it's how to make those services accessible. So it's the barriers that people, especially in the deaf community, face. The deaf community, 1 in 2 people have mental health issues, which is much worse than the general population, which is 1 in 4. And the reason for that is the lack of access to information. They don't know there's a problem in the first place. The extra barriers in going to a GP, how can I get an interpreter in there? So I think a lot of the ways you can increase good health and well-being is trying to remove the experts, and it's about asking the experts themselves. It's about talk to people who've got lived experience. What are the problems that you're finding? Why are you having these barriers? How can we get rid of them? And whether that's linked to sustainability or making sure that everything is green, making something inclusive. For me, that would be sign language, and think about how people can contact you and how people can get access to the information that you're providing. It's having the correct methods in place in order to achieve that, I think, is key.
As you were saying then, I have been thinking back. I'm not a massive event goer. I'm a great event organiser, I like to think so. But in terms of the events that I have gone to, I've generally gone there to learn something, to understand something better, to see what's innovative in the market, to see what's coming next. And you're right, I think there's a huge parts of our world, our population, that are automatically limited from accessing that kind of information, and events are the real kind of driver to making that a better situation, I guess. So can I ask you, Damaris, obviously we are talking here and in an event space where a lot of our industry don't understand the first steps of becoming accessible. Can you give us one way of doing that?
I think the key is to think about the information and how people access it. I use interpreters, so it would be thinking about linking to a deaf organisation and saying, right, you know, have you got an interpreter agency that you can recommend? Because there are a lot of cowboy interpreter agencies out there, and you could Google and find a list of them, but none of them, you know, could potentially be any good. So the best thing is to ask the experts and say, look, we've got this event, we want to make sure it's accessible and that, you know, people can get the information that they need. What is the best way that we can do it? So I think that would be the main takeaway, is talk to the experts.
Absolutely, and I'm going to add one thing in there, which is you are going to make mistakes. We've been on I hate the word, on a journey in opening up and understanding accessibility within our events, and I've made some horrendous mistakes. I have personally found that working with a partner like Sorensen has really helped, because we've been learning and understanding, and developing a deeper relationship enables us to learn effectively. So thank you for that. We're going to go on to quality education, because I think that kind of has linked in slightly, and I'm going to talk about from my point of view on this one actually. Here in the Ops Nest, we are fundamentally sourcing speakers, sourcing information to help our community learn, and I have noticed very vividly that we've quite often gone to people that we know, and I think it's a real issue within the events industry that we pull our content from a very small segment of society, or go to people that we have relationships with. I'm really guilty of it. I have to work really hard to work against my innate being to find speakers that come from parts of the society or parts of our community that I wouldn't normally access to. So I'm sticking my hand up for that one in terms of quality education, because I think the first thing that we could all do is make sure that our panels aren't full of people that we just know, you know, and actually seek out people that have got a reason and a valid and varied viewpoint. So that's also a work in progress for me. Don't get it right all the time at all, but I think you have to set that intention. So any of you got any other ideas around kind of quality education? If not, I can move on. There's plenty more UN goals to go.
I think the only thing I'd add to that, and it's just cowboying basically off what you said, is sustainable events. You don't always want to push it in people's faces, because sometimes the event isn't about being sustainable, but having a small sign by the refillable water station of why it's so important to refill your water bottle instead of buying a plastic one, why you've got plastic-free print. It doesn't have to be pushed on people, but having those small notes where you tell your attendees why we've done this and why we've made that small change can have a huge influence, and that's educating people.
Absolutely. Damaris.
Also, just to add on to that, if you've got little bits of information, you need to think about how you can make that accessible, and the easiest way to do that is having a QR code, similarly to you've got on the screen over here. Have a QR code that links to a translation, and then you don't have to think, you know, massively about, oh God, we've got to translate this into all sorts of things.
Thank you. That one's definitely going on the list. We talked a little bit around equality in terms of access to information. One of the other ones on the UN goals is gender equality. I feel like we can almost wrap that up into what I just talked about in terms of addressing who's on your panels and things. But we also, I guess, need to look at it in terms of the businesses that we work in as well. Anyone got any input around that?
I think I can slowly speak to that a little bit. So we focus a lot with our supplier network on a couple of factors. So we focus on their sustainable credentials, we focus on their social credentials as well. So we don't work with companies that don't have a modern slavery statement and they don't have a sustainability statement. I obviously care about sustainability, but I care just as equally as if you're using bad labour practices where you are manufacturing something. It doesn't matter if you're using solar power, if you're taking advantage of people or communities. So that's really, really important to us as a group, is that we need to pick and choose where we invest in and who we're giving our money to, and they need to align with our goals. So there has to be some sort of social element there. It doesn't necessarily touch exactly on gender equality, but equality and like social responsibilities in that, and it has to be paid attention to. You can't just look one focus on, oh, do they recycle, do they have ISO 1400, but we don't care about anything else. It is, people contain multitudes, company contain multitudes.
Yeah. It's been interesting, actually. I judged some awards recently, and one of the key things that I was looking for in the category that I was judging was around how their people are, like how the efforts that are made to balance out inequalities within their either their procurement or their employment strategies and things. And I think the companies that did deliver on that were certainly some of the ones that rose to the top of the list in terms of good practices within the business. I'm also going to pop onto there, obviously anti-slavery policies, some of the policy elements are phenomenal. I think it's also important for us to start looking at how we create the ability to work on some of our sites. We can request all the policies in the world, but then if we create working hours that are not viable for a working mother, for example, or for somebody who is a carer, then we're almost perpetuating a problem but asking them to give a policy on the back end that says something different. So I think from my little addition for this one is to look quite holistically at how companies are employing.
Yeah, I think that also sort of goes back to the health and well-being. I mean, anyone who works in this industry knows that people are often up late into the night, waking up really early in the morning, driving really long distances, doing manual labour for really, really long hours. And if the companies that employ them aren't sort of keeping check on that and making sure that all of their employees are supported, then you are really failing. You need to make sure that you've got everything in place at your workplace to support your outcome. So you have to make sure that you do have an EAP, it's like the very basics, and that you're promoting those, because some people don't know that they exist. And then once you sit down, you speak to your workforce and you explain, like, this is what we have in space to help you, this is what we can do to support you, then you have a happier workforce.
Thanks. Right, we're going to very quickly do affordable and clean energy. I mean, bearing in mind we're sitting in an exhibition venue, affordable energy doesn't quite come easy. But the one thing that we can all do when procuring our kind of venue contracts is to check how that power is being brought into the venue. So there's a quick win. Bearing in mind we're on a time limit, I'm going to leave that one there because that could be a few hours of conversation on affordable energy. But at least if it's not affordable, at least make sure it's clean, and at least start asking the questions of where the energy is coming from and is it sustainable. The one that I love, because we are a community as the Ops Nest, is sustainable cities and communities, and I think this is somewhere a situation where events really do come to the fore, where we can have a real impact. So, Matilda, I'm going to come to you in the first instance, particularly in light of the event that you ran last week.
Yeah, of course. So as you said, we're a community in ourselves, and I think coming to events like this and Reimagine last week really just showcases how people are thinking about it and how we can have such a big impact by creating this community that's so invested in creating sustainable events. But I think what's also that we have the power when we go to or organise events elsewhere, we also have a power to make an impact there. We try to make a positive, lasting legacy with every event that we do. Whether that be next year we've got an event where we're going to, we always try to do this, but really have a focus on using local suppliers. That will reduce travel emissions, but also support the community. And we're going to have stickers that say this is a local business, so that when people are there and attending, they know that afterwards, this is only local. They can use them, and that is a real positive, lasting legacy. So using local suppliers and highlighting that's really important. And also we partner with Just One Tree. They plant trees, so what we try to do for every event is plant one tree per attendee. It costs £1, and then that forest continues to grow even after the event's gone, and that, sustainable city.
Absolutely. Damaris, have you got anything to add into? Don't worry. Poor lady. Walk through the session. Sorry, Damaris, over to you.
Well, I was just thinking about creating community, and I was thinking about, a sense of creating that sense of belonging, so people think about, are we actually accessible, and thinking about events as a whole and thinking, right, how can we include everybody, and then how do I start with that? That one of those is connection, information, which I've touched on briefly, but I think you need to create a sense of community. And in order to do that, to create that sense of belonging, you need to think about how you include everybody, how do you design the event. And these things don't, automatically come to you. You do have to work on it, but it is something that you bear in mind. You need to think, well, I haven't got very many people from that community coming to my event, and the reason is that it's not accessible to them, it's not open to them. And it's a two-way process, ask people why they aren't coming. And to create community, you need to think about the community, and you need to think about everybody.
I think one of the biggest things that I'm trying to understand is taking a step beyond inclusion and get to the point where there's a sense of belonging, that you belong in that event, that this is a natural environment for you. You don't feel that you're trying to bend into shape to feel comfortable in that event. Can you talk a little around that, Damaris? Because I feel like out of the four of us, your lived experience in this is the expert view.
Yeah, I think inclusion and accessibility are quite big buzzwords, and there's a lot of tick boxes that can go along with those. Oh, we're very inclusive. We've got inclusive content. Well, okay, if you're inclusive, do you have accessibility? Both of them go hand in hand, and they both work together. You can't have one without the other. So, like, for example, you might have an InVision sign language interpreter on your content. But it may be that somebody doesn't understand sign language, so you might be inclusive, but you're not, or you're accessible, but you're not inclusive. So you need to think both ways, and you need to think about, both the inclusion and the accessibility, and then you think, right, now I've got it. If I go to an event and I think, oh, everything's accessible for me, then I feel included, and I think, yeah, you've got it.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Right, so that's our people done. Have we got any other kind of people ideas before we move on to planet? Anything from the audience? I will be coming at the end if I manage to get through them in time. Okay, let's skip on to planet. So we've got 4 in this section. So clean water and sanitation, climate action, life below water, and life on land. And I think in summary of this section, this is what we've all been talking about. This has been the buzzword for quite a while now, so we're going to absolutely power through these little nuggets. Right, clean water and sanitation. I'm going to come to you, Matilda, on this one. I think you've got a great idea for this.
Well, when we were just discussing this, we were saying there's always a charity donation. You can always put on an event and give a charity donation, and I think for some of the water ones, unfortunately, that is where it falls. But we had, sorry to keep talking about Reimagine, our event last week, it's just very hot on my mind. We had a stage backdrop a bit like this, and it's made of fabric, so we will bring it around with us to every single Reimagine that we host in the future. But it's made from recycled plastic that was found in the ocean. So it's a company that goes out there, collects litter from the ocean and then makes it into these reusable signs. And I think that's a really great way of incorporating clean water and sanitation that you wouldn't always think of. And also, if we get to a point where we change our branding, that can then be recycled again, so it's never going to go back into the ocean, fingers crossed with all my heart. But yeah, it doesn't have to always be a charity donation. There are small ways like that where you're bringing in the goal as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of some of these things are a bit of a reach, we appreciate that, but we set ourselves a goal and we've got to find a way to make it happen. We can't fail. So I agree, like bare minimum, there's some amazing water charities out there that in the same way that maybe you've done the tree thing, there's ability to put back into water sanitation. Let's go to climate action as the general one. Alya, should I come to you generally on this one?
Sure. I mean, we're all aware of what climate change is doing to the world. We're all aware of what events are doing to the world. If you are part of any sort of sustainability initiatives at your job, you will probably be working towards some sort of carbon neutral net zero, which is still very difficult to sort of cutting out there to achieve. It is hard, and you do need to get those goals in place. At the moment, we are working with a carbon accounting company to measure our carbon called Greenly, and we will be getting feedback on how we can reach our goals and reduce our emissions. But there is a sort of toss-up between how do you reduce your emissions if you plan on increasing the workload of your business? Like, how do those two marry up? And we have had to get some advice on that because it's not a problem that I can solve myself.
Yeah. Matilda, have you got a general kind of climate action? Well, I think the fact that you're both of you, are in your roles is climate action.
Of course, yeah. And I think you've probably heard this 1,000 times, but just start measuring. You're going to have numbers. You might not know what they mean, but at least with numbers, you can see reductions rather than words. We try and carbon track as many of our events as well as possible, which isn't always easy. You need to get suppliers on board and the venue on board, and UK is a bit easier, but if you're in the US market, you'll understand that it's almost impossible to get suppliers and venues on board. But if you've got a number and you're just measuring as what you can, it's a place to start. We all know we need to do carbon reduction, so just measure, benchmark, and try and start those reductions, but you can only do that once you have a number to work with. But yeah, Greenly, we're looking at working with them. There's also other Alya and Event Decision are here that look at just specific event measuring. There's so many tools out there now. It's just about getting started, and I think that's really daunting. Especially, I have a geography background, so it wasn't quite as daunting to me, but so many people are event managers and event producers still that have now been given this role of creating sustainable events. How are they meant to know what to do? Like, not in a rude way, but how they're event producers, how are they meant to know now about carbon emissions? So just go out there, don't be afraid to ask for help, but yeah, we need to just start measuring as much as we can.
I'm going to add in on that one. So you just got to start, and on our stand over there, the kind of message we're pushing is one change. Let's make one change a month. That's all you need to do, because they're setting the intention of making a change. You might just pull a change off the shelf for the first month. The second month, you're like, oh, that led to something else. Actually, I'm going to change this. And before you know it, a year down the line, you're actually making fundamental change. So along with measuring, I'm going to stick on the list, just make one change a month and start learning how to make that change. We've got so life below water. Alya, did you have an example for this as well? That we
Yeah,
want to
I
share?
did. So when we were looking at, I mean, I don't really like the concept of offsetting because I feel like it is a bit greenwashy. You just plant some trees and forget about it. But it does obviously have a positive impact. So we looked at the difference between terrestrial forests and coastal forests, and we decided to invest more in sort of mangrove areas, which actually capture the carbon in the riverbeds and ocean beds, which then doesn't get re-released back into the atmosphere when a tree dies, which is what happens with terrestrial forests. So the coastal environments have sort of maybe 5 to 10 times more capacity for carbon capture. And one thing that is really important to me is that we go with a company that is legitimate, because there has been some instances where tree planting just results in one company wiping out some indigenous farmland in a country in South America, doesn't care about anything, and plants some trees and walks away from it. And it's also about looking after local communities. So we will be working for sea reforestation, which is mangroves and seaweed in Canada, and along the coast of Chile. So they will be, on our behalf, planting kelp, which in Chile also has quite cultural significance for harvesting. So the fact that it's reduced about, I think, 40% over the past couple of years is really damaging to those communities, and it's also damaging to the environment because it's not helping capture as much carbon, and it's resulting in a decrease of sort of aquatic life, commercially and culturally. So things like salmon are also on the decline because of the lack of seaweed. So again, we looked at working with the big Blue Ocean company, which was sort of reducing plastic from the oceans as well. So we look a lot at tree planting, but really the ocean has a lot of capacity for change and help there.
Okay. On that note, I'm just going to say the one biggest thing you could probably do is hire someone like these guys, because ops-wise, I don't have the time to learn all of that stuff. And I think this shows really where we do need to go in our organisations. If you already don't have a sustainability and social impact person who's got the time to understand the intricacies of where you put your money, how you feed back into the whole cycle of everything, then that's number one on the list. Thank you for that. So we've covered planet, I think, quite a lot on this one. Anyone else got anything to add into planet before we go to prosperity? Okie dokie. Right, on to the dirty word of profit that we're scratching out and replacing with prosperity, because money does make this world go round. So we're going to have to make sure that the people that have got the money are the good people that are putting it back into the planet. So first on the list, we've got kind of decent work and economic growth. Matilda.
Hello.
Can you remember what you put in for this one?
No, but
you make something up.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit about what I spoke about earlier. It's hiring people that are local. It's hiring people that work nearby, that can man the bar staff or something. There's no need for you to be flying people out to do that. There's no need for you to be hiring people that live far away. Invest in that community. Also looking at local suppliers, of course. I was just about to say something else and it's gone from my brain.
That's fine. Why don't I sneak on to the one idea and then you can interrupt and come back. No, that's absolutely fine. Because by the time I finish this sentence, I've probably forgot what I was going to say as well. Actually, what I was going to say is around that to kind of decent work and economic growth, I think it's important that we understand our supply chains and appreciate that everybody within a supply chain needs to make money. And actually one of the driving issues that we've got is that sustainability does cost money. It does cost money to have someone like you in the organisation who can focus on time and energy on this. And therefore it's important that we're making sure our supply chain earns enough money to invest into sustainability as well. So that's my my thing going in. We've just done a little course on kind of trading fairly, ideas around trading fairly, and making sure that there's prosperity into the mix. So it's top of my list. Anything else on decent work and economic growth from the panel?
I mean, I would add to that there is sort of the big question is, can capitalism and sustainability go hand in hand? Probably no, but we can try and make it work. Sustainability should cost a company money in the first investment, but ultimately it's about saving resources, and that means your time, it means your employees' time, it means your money. And if it's done well and it's done correctly, you do end up seeing cost savings in the long run. If you were trying to reduce your energy, you were going to be paying less money for your energy. If you were trying to improve your operations and make sure that you're reducing damages, then you're saving money on rebuying the same thing over and over again. I mean, if you look back, our grandmothers had furniture that lasted 80 to 100 years, and our furniture lasts 2 years until you move and it gets broken. It's like, if something is done sustainably, it's done well, it lasts a long time, and it increases cost savings over the long run.
Yeah, so a longer term strategy around it.
I think also, just to jump in there, is that we're seeing, and I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but people are wanting to choose sustainable businesses now, sustainable venues, sustainable hotels. That has a return on investment as well, because unfortunately at the moment it's still kind of seen as a unique selling point, but that at the moment we kind of have to grasp that and use it to our advantage and be like, yes, we do have this added extra, and people are willing to pay more for that and will return. I think it's something like 30% more customers will return to a business if they think they're being sustainable.
Right. Actually, Damaris, I'm going to come to you on this one, because there's
I'm more of the next one, actually.
well, definitely, but I am going to bring in the power of spending within a broader community basis. We, I think, as the events industry, turn our backs on a whole bunch of prosperity by not including people. Can you talk a little bit around that before we jump into the next one?
Yeah, that's fine. No, I think also talking about staff and recruiting the right staff. Think about including deaf staff potentially, because if you recruit people that already understand barriers in the organisation, then that's a really good place of starting to get rid of the barriers. So it's thinking about your audience, not just your external audience, but also your internal audience within your organisation. And so actually making sure that your recruitment process is accessible. And actually I'm really surprised at events like this about the lack of knowledge about, there's a government scheme called Access to Work, which helps with deaf and disabled people getting access to the workplace. It's physical resources, interpreter supplies, that kind of thing. So there are lots of schemes out there that are a good start for companies to improve their infrastructure.
Fantastic. Right, we're going to stick that on the list then. Access to work. Reduced inequalities. We kind of slip very, very easily into that one.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are probably scared to do the wrong thing and think, I don't want to say the wrong thing, I don't know where to go. And so the best thing and the best place to start is often deaf awareness training. And that kind of helps you to identify a person's journey and to think about, how will they access my organisation? Where are the gaps? Where are the barriers? What can I improve? And again, as I said, it's not just externally to the people that you're reaching out to, but it's also internally to the people that you're working with. And if you don't know, then don't assume. I think there's a lot of tick box exercises that go on, and people who, we can bring somebody in that signs. They may not be fully qualified, they may not have the correct insurance, they may not be registered, but you don't know that that's what is needed. So I think it's good to get all the information, and as a starting point, deaf awareness is a great place to start, and then that helps identify some of the inequalities, and you can only address those once you know what they are.
Excellent. We love that one. We're coming really close to, I think we've probably got seconds now, 1 minute. Okay, so I think we have talked around responsible consumption and production within one of the other topics that we've done. So I'm going to take that one. And we're going to end on partnership on goals, because it's like my favorite thing ever. I always think we cannot work in isolation. We only have what's in front of us if we do so. So can we have a 20-second roundup from each of you about the importance of partnerships in your business and how that helps you?
Yeah, I think to streamline it, as I said at the beginning of this, that you have to share your failures and you have to share your successes, which is obviously all about what One Change is about. We're not really at the point anymore. I think you can hold your cards close to your chest so that you can make more money by being the most sustainable company, but I'm not going to let anyone else know about that because I want more clients to come to us. We're not at that point anymore. We're a little bit beyond that. Yeah.
Love it. And for you, Matilda?
I think it's all about partnerships. Internally, at an agency, we all have to be on board to reach that common goal of being more sustainable, but also the supply chain, that's so important. If you've got a sustainable supply chain, you can put on a sustainable event, basically. So it's just about finding those connections and finding that network, and it's also trust, because people do like to lie sometimes, unfortunately.
And Damaris, Sorensen is our new One Change kind of partner within the Ops Nest. So 100% partnership. So a bit of 20 seconds from you, sorry.
I think change can include everybody, and especially climate change and sustainability can include everybody, and make sure that people are included. So think about partnering with deaf experts to help you then understand where you can open up, and then once you've opened up to the deaf community, you're including an element of the general population that you haven't been able to reach before, which will then provide increased benefits for you. And I think that's my 20 seconds.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all three of you. We've totally run out of time, so grab us at the end if you want to let us know your ideas for One Change, and we'll send out the link as well, so that you can, whenever you make a change, pop it in there, tell us what went wrong, tell us what went right, and we'll all be better for it. You can then access all the other ideas in there as well. So thank you so much. Again, thanks for listening, and catch you later.
Thank you.